Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, including grain, hops, yeast, water, and love. Everything you need to craft yourself a frosty cold one, and believe us, you're going to need a few for this episode. Listener discretion is advised.
You have the honor of drawing first blood. What do you recommend?
There's one. It's Crowning Glory.
Rather fitting.
How's that?
I'm Gary King.
Well,
So tell me more.
what?
Crowning Glory, is it nutty? Is it foamy? Is it hoppy? Does it have a surprisingly fruity note which lingers on the tongue?
It's beer.
We'll have 5 of those, please.
No, sorry. Can we have 4 of those and a tap water, please?
What?
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked
Will you help teach me
and famous.
about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello and welcome to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. You know what? I've been doing these lead-ins. I've been carrying this show for the last, 70 episodes or so, and I'm just a little tired. I think tonight I'm gonna throw it over to Ben. Ben, why don't you do some work for once on the podcast and lead us into this show?
I'm having a good time.
So far, off to a bad start.
Not. No,
Okay, well,
sorry.
this was a terrible idea, but
There's the Wayne's World reference. No, thanks everybody for joining up and listening to us today. And the reason why I think Matt probably kicked it over to me is because we do have a guest today to talk a little bit about correlated to our topic today, which is beer. Again, it's like the third time we've talked about beer.
Well, technically today's episode is called Ice Cold Beer, and then in parentheses, readings. So we've actually combined something we've done 3 times with something we've done 4 times, but now they're together.
But please tell me if you heard of that old school arcade game called Ice Cold Beer, where you try to send a silver pinball through a hole. You know what I'm talking about?
I believe there's actually one of those at the Pinball Arcade in Delray.
Yeah, I think
Delray
so.
Beach.
I think so.
I think you can go down there and play that game. So
A place I am not going anywhere in the near future.
So we do have a kind of a special guest here, at least on the front half of the podcast, but he's welcome to join us for as long as he wants. His name's Joel Codner. He's a brewer extraordinaire who I met many years ago when he was working at one of our local breweries here in Boynton Beach. Joel, how are you doing?
What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thank you,
Joel.
And we're actually just coming off of a little like digital happy hour that his podcast, United We Drink, which also is their site, unitedwedrink.com. They've been hosting kind of a digital happy hour every few weeks, which has been pretty awesome to talk to some people who are mostly involved with the brewing industry and then just nerds like me.
Ben Wilson is warmed up, is what you're saying. that explains the random Wayne's World reference.
Yeah.
No, I've been planning that since Matt just said how he was going to, since 2.5 minutes ago when he said he's going to turn it over to me. I was just like, I got to do the Garth thing.
Longtime listeners will want to start waging their bets right now to how far toward the end of the podcast does Ben make it. Everyone place your bets now. We are still collecting for the next 2 minutes.
45 minutes in.
It depends on it. Is it like the
Price is Right rules? You got it. Yeah, if you go over
Road to Perdition level.
Nothing quite will ever reach the Road to Perdition level.
No,
but
I don't believe so. But Halloween, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
We full on lost Ben, Joel, when we started talking about Road to Perdition about 30 minutes in.
I just fell asleep.
Completely lost it.
And he's better now that he's at his own place, because there are other times where Ben also becomes like a caged animal, and he all of a sudden just decides he can't be in the room anymore and must escape. But we have soundproofing in the room, so it's very difficult for him to get out. It's like it's childproofed, and that's usually
tearing down foam and
usually
clip pins.
A good 5 minutes of entertainment to watch him try to get out of the room while we're just pretending like nothing's happening.
That's great. I'm happy that those 3 times that's happened on the podcast. Let me explain.
You can listen to those episodes and more.
Let me tell embarrassing stories about 2 of you on the podcast.
Oh, don't worry. I've got some queued up
enough
things
about
for that.
us. Enough about us, Ben. Let's talk.
Exactly. But anyway, one of the reasons why I brought you along is because I have been listening to the United We Drink podcast, which is a lot of fun, especially for people who are really interested in kind of the craft beer industry. All three of the guys, Phil, Joel, and Mike, have been in various sort of positions within the craft brewing industry, and they'll have a pretty good insight about it. So I thought it would be kind of intuitive, both to get his perspective on a pop culture, the pop culture side of the way that movies and TV sort of approach beer and brewing, and also just kind of drinking overall, but also getting a little bit of perspective on kind of like what we think about beer and kind of bouncing that back and forth. So
Well, spoiler alert, Ben loves it.
Well, and also I kind of want to,
that.
and I definitely want to kind of cover a little bit. Maybe we can start off here and then work our way kind of into the more traditional stuff. But obviously, right now with the pandemic and restaurants closing and things going down, it's a lot of difficulty and there's been a lot of maneuvering and positioning on behalf of breweries, and it's kind of been interesting to watch them do it typically better than almost anybody else out there. The brewers were the first people to get their acts together. In addition to also,
I did that today.
Yeah,
fully through text and online ordering. Showed up, texted Highland Park Brewery. Someone came out, left it on the table. I picked it up and I left. It was seamless.
Yeah. So, I mean, were you involved at least? And you were, like, when this first hit, did you think like, this is it? Like we're shutting down, this is just it's not a sustainable model, or was that kind of very quickly, was there a pivot to be able to kind of go, oh, we can do this?
Well, when this was first going on, we didn't really know what to think. I mean, and full disclosure, I'm no longer with my brewery, but I did resign a couple weeks ago. But when coronavirus was starting to get very serious in early March, my boss thought, and he's kind of a hypochondriac himself and a germaphobe. So he was very nervous and thought, people are not going to come here. I very specifically got an email saying people are scared. They're nervous. They're not going to come here. They're not going to drink. They don't want to gather. They don't want to, group together, and things are going to be very slow. And then the second all schools were canceled, our tap room blew up. I mean, people just came out. And it was kind of like, when summer break starts, the teachers come out, everyone comes out, and it was very, very busy. So
the last gasp.
right. And then my boss comes in and he's like, man, I think business is going to explode. People are going to get stir crazy. So I'm like, well, Christ, which one is it? But, we really try to push for to-go sales. We were a brew pub, so we were doing wood-fired pizzas and wings and things of that nature, as well as the beer. So we had a lot of to-go options. We really tried to push takeout sales, and it seemed like everyone was just very intimidated, and people kind of stayed away. And we pulled the plug very early on. Just, my boss just decided, hey, we're going to just shut it down and see how it goes. We'll furlough everyone, and we'll get back to business when we can. But out of a true safety measure, it just didn't seem like staying open was the right thing to do. A lot of places did. A lot of places just stayed with to-go sales, and we were closed down for about 6 weeks. Then we tried to reopen for to-go sales only, which was okay in the beginning, and then it got busier and busier and busier day after day until it was actually uncomfortably slammed. And then once we got the go-ahead from the governor to reopen following Monday at 25% capacity, it was like you would think the headlines in the Palm Beach Post that morning read, Jap surrender, like as if we had won the war and coronavirus was over, because everyone came out. I mean, the place was absolutely slammed. And the thought of reopening at even 25% capacity indoors was terrifying. We were working on a minimal staff, minimal product, and it's like, I don't even know how to keep, in our case, it would have been like 40 or 42 people. Yeah. And it's like, I don't even know how to maintain that.
Yeah, I think it was definitely kind of an interesting barometer, because I feel like a lot of people were very proactive about it, and that's all across the spectrum. I mean, different breweries basically just saying like, okay, we're going to do safe practices, and we're going to maintain safe brewing practices, and we're going to do releases, but we're going to do this in this super safe, or ideally safe, quote unquote, manner. and then others who kind of shut down and then slowly started kind of acclimating back into it. But yeah, like I said, now, I mean, one of the things I thought was just incredible was that now there's like a totally, a van with a whole decal on it from civil society that would just deliver beer to your house. I mean, like an entire van. I was just like, and obviously
really helping the image of the van.
They have some clout. But I mean, it was pretty incredible just because I was just like, at first it was a dude in a truck. And then 2 weeks later, it was just like, okay, we've acclimated to this. We've done the whole, we've had the giant van with the whole decal, civil society decal on the side. And I was I was just impressed by how fast and I understand that they had a lot of money, obviously disposable income behind that. So that's, a lot of smaller breweries don't have access to that.
Or they're not canning. I mean, not everyone is canning.
Exactly.
And not everybody wants to make a trip out to get a crowler or a growler. They want the cans. I mean, my brewery of choice in Southern California is Highland Park Brewery. And
because it's right down the street from you.
Well, I actually have to go downtown to the Spring location for the pickups. Okay. Hermosillo is closed down still. But that's part of it. That the Hermosillo, the bar they operated out of, was a hub. It was a social gathering hub. It was always packed. It's a famous spot here, and really kind of
still one of the spots of one of the strangest social interactions I've ever had in my entire life. Remember with Jen Van Gasbeek when she was like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah, I don't think for some reason we didn't tell our friends that Ben was in town, and we came upon them randomly, and I thought they were seeing a ghost of Ben Wilson. But
from Florida,
yeah,
in Highland Park, California,
he loves the beer. But they only really just started probably in the past year, really making an effort to can and the whole rigmarole that goes along with that. Design, labeling, and if they didn't have that, I mean, that's the majority of their sales right now. I got a crowler because we're in it for the long haul with this episode, but I would prefer to have cans at this point. Not everybody has that capability.
And also, just as a point of reference, I know that Joel, I think you're really you're big into a lot of the traditional styles of beers too, like kind of a wide spectrum of beers, like across sort of the range of what's available out there. Well, I found it kind of funny because on our digital happy hour earlier, you were just like, and then you got these breweries that are just like brewing shit with Citra. It's just like all Citra. And I looked down at my beer and I'm drinking an outer range beer that's literally only hopped with Citra. I was just like, fuck.
Well, it's not that I'm necessarily into those styles or prefer them or anything, but I think that they are. Well, yeah, it's variety. Like we were talking about earlier. It's South Florida seems very flashy, trendy. What have you done for me lately? It's got to, speak. It's got to be something crazy or nobody's interested. I remember at the first brewery I worked at, my boss had said, in Florida, nobody wants to drink it if you don't put your dick in it, meaning that, it has to be something so outrageous to get anyone's attention. Whereas you have other places like Chicago and the other regions where a huge can release for a brewery will be like a Hefeweizen or something, so down here it's just a little bit flashier. It's always got to be done for the Instagram. It's always got to glow under a black light or have Oreos in it. And
in Chicago, they just dip part of the scrotum, not the whole dick.
Do you think that
so it's not to shit on those beers because some of them are well done, but most of them aren't.
Well, I guess that's kind of interesting. Do you think that the population at large, because like it's interesting. Obviously, I know a lot of like the extreme beer crowd through Ben, and then there's like people that are kind of in my group that look like extreme beer people to the people below me, and like it filters down, right? And so, for me, I could care less usually when there's like Ben has to tell me something's a big deal for me to be like, okay, Like I don't know. I have no knowledge of
What if I told you a beer was a big deal, Matt? Would you trust my word?
I would just trust it's something I'd like, but I wouldn't think it was actually like we don't know what is a
I got a
rare
bright
thing.
magenta. I got a bright magenta sour that you're gonna love, Matt.
Oh God Almighty, no sours for me. But what do you think the mix of that population is like down here? Do you think it really is like front heavy on those extreme people that need that crazy stuff?
Well, I mean, they're definitely a minority, but it's a very vocal minority. And
It's a good way to put it.
my previous brewery, I was very, very thankful to fly under the radar the way I did, because I think it gave the proper expectations. I mean, we were a brew pub, so we tried to offer something for everyone. We were downtown, which hosted a wide variety of people. I mean, millennials to retirees, the whole gamut, people from all walks of life. So we tried to offer a great variety of beers, and we did dip our toes into the extreme, whether it would be barrel aged barley wine or coconut imperial stout or coffee cream, but nothing so absolutely outrageous. We weren't throwing Eggo waffles in the kettle or anything like that, but trying to offer
Stranger
something.
things have been put in beers. Sorry.
But there are some breweries who that's their entire thing, and they're setting themselves up for some very high expectations. So when you come out there and you say, okay, this is the double barrel aged, triple dry hopped, Eggo waffle, French toast stick, maple imperial, Tahitian vanilla, raspberry, whatever, people are going to expect that. And I've always said, if you say something's in a beer, it better be in that beer. Otherwise, you're going to disappoint people. So, fortunately, we kept everything very balanced and approachable in a way. So, we wouldn't be just getting torn apart with these reviews. Like, I don't get the chocolate in this one. You know what I mean? Like, we tried to keep it very balanced and approachable, and not try to blow anyone away with these unrealistic expectations.
If you bend the knee to those untapped assholes, those expectations are going to be set forever.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you the perfect example. I mean, on our opening night, it was basically our soft opening. The night before, we had a private friends and family opening. And then, our soft opening to the public, that's where you try to work out the kinks. That's where, if you have any issues, you'll figure out how to adjust and move forward. So we do this soft opening. Of course, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We ran out of wings in the first hour. The cooks locked themselves out of the prep room.
Oh no!
Just all kinds of nonsense. The POS system went down. So yeah, we had tons of issues, and that's exactly why you have a soft opening.
Sounds like an episode of Party Down.
That's why they call it a POS.
So this guy who went by Doug on whatever social media tore us apart. I mean, he was sitting there in our tap room, just ripping us apart, leaving all these horrible reviews on every possible, social media network and review site you can imagine, saying things on, I don't know, Untapped or Yelp, saying something like, "Oh, the IPA is not bad, but it's better than the service here." And, saying we ruined his birthday. Every negative reviewer, it happens to be their birthday.
Who goes for a soft opening?
My
for their
33rd birthday was ruined.
What the fuck? It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and he said a lot of terrible things, including what I thought was the most hilarious was, you should have had a soft opening. And it's like, this was the soft opening. So I went and looked at some of the other things he reviewed, and obviously we try to please everyone, but we know we can't. And I love when you see those Instagram memes of like some sidewalk chalkboard that says, "Yeah, come try the worst meatball sandwich you've ever had," according to some guy on TripAdvisor. So I kind of, played into that, and I looked at the rest of his reviews, and it was like 1 star for Chipotle because the portions aren't what they used to be, or 1 star for this Vietnamese restaurant because their hours aren't what they say on the website. Like, just all kinds of, there was no constructive criticism. So I had this dry hopped pale ale in a tank. I had no name for it. and I decided to call it One Star Dougie. It ended up being like one of our more popular beers, and it was great to just sort of take that negative kind of
That's
unfounded
amazing.
criticism and turn it on its head.
That's
the
awesome.
troll becomes the trolled.
Oh,
Excellent.
well, okay, well, before we get into the pop culture thing, I do have to say, so we're on a beer podcast. What are you guys drinking right now?
I wish it was One Star Dougie, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
I'm drinking
think-
this
I think-
import called Heineken. Heineken.
please.
No, this is a civil society fresh.
Matt's not gonna slum it for the beer
Fresh.
cast.
It's
The
just
fresh?
just a little fresh.
Just fresh. I'm drinking a Parish Ghost in the Machine. Sorry, I mean it's of the kind of Northeast style hoppier IPAs. It's world class, so I don't feel bad about it.
Oh,
You don't think that was Doug McKenzie on Yelp, do you?
I don't know. It could have been.
Hey,
Could've been.
did Doug say that you found a mouse in your beer at any point?
The difference between Doug and Ben is Doug goes to a place and bitches, and Ben is this guy.
I got some beers. Let's drink them, huh?
Although I do have a question actually on deck. I have this. Have you had any of the stuff from Hourglass, Joel?
No, I haven't.
So
They're
this is
definitely on my
it's a
radar.
great Westie. It's called 2 Million Bees and Some Hops, and I just tried it earlier, but
I only know the dog breed. What does that mean?
No. For those
it-
of you that
so-
don't know, it is made with real pieces of Westie dog hair
Oh, it's-
actually in
it's,
there. It's brewed with it.
Stop it.
it's a
That's-
West Coast style
cold
IPA
pressed.
that's brewed with honey. But no, it's I think it's
West
pretty solid.
Coast and honey, you say?
A
Mr.
lot of
Fancy
beers are
Pants
brewed with
over
rye
there.
and honey. It's
That's how people
what do you
describe
what are
me.
you drinking, Nick? Come on.
I am drinking yes! Exclamation point from Highland Park Brewery. It's a hazy double IPA with mango, watermelon, and grape qualities.
Can I
don't
real
wanna
quick-
embarrass
can I-
myself. I like the juice bombs. That's what I like, and it's really good. But
Can I request?
your thing.
Can I
Highland Park
request?
does a good job with them.
I'd just like to request a slight change in your line reading. I think the yes should be delivered a la Ed McMahon
Yes!
on the
yes,
yeah yes
yes.
yeah
Yes,
yes. Right. Thank you
Yes.
thank you.
I could just see the album cover, the Yes album cover right now.
It's Southern Hemisphere hops, Nelson and Galaxy, and dry hopping.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's good.
Joel, you drinking anything right now?
Also,
Yes.
real quick on Untapped, the last person to sign in was Ben W.
Oh.
That's not me.
I know. I figured it might be. Sorry, Joel. What are you drinking?
So I have a Copper Point High Ridge West Coast IPA.
It's a great beer.
I was blown away by this one. I mean, I personally know these guys. I used to drink there all the time when I worked at the brewery down the street. I was really blown away by this, and there seems to be this very strange resurgence of West Coast IPA, like in the past couple
yeah.
of weeks.
It's not strange. I think that it was natural for that to come around because from somebody who's been on like the precipice of like really extreme craft beer for 6 years now, at least, there's always been this trend. It's been like, at first it was like, okay, what's the next hop? Like in 15 and 16 and 17, it was just like Trillium and Treehouse. And it was just like, we were going hard for all these. And then it was just like, okay, no, now we're getting to like the really, really like heavy barrel aged beers, like for a couple of years. It was just whatever who could make the most incredible, barrel aged or craziest barrel aged beer. And then crazy enough, it went to like Krispies. It went to like lagers and stuff like that. And for the past couple of years that people have been like going nuts about lagers, but now everyone's getting back into the Westies. And I really think it's cool because it's kind of come full circle from the Pliny, like from the days of like 2009, 2010, 2011. And I still remember like my birthday in 2011 was held at BX Beer Depot in Lake
Wow.
Worth.
That's a great birthday.
Like we rented the whole outdoor back because I was friends with Sue and I was friends with Corey, who went on to work at Copper Point and is now at I think he's still at Crazy Uncle Mike's, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But was at Prosperity for a while and stuff like that. But it's really interesting to kind of see how those progressions go because I mean I feel like. And now it's some of the guys that are like hardcore beer guys that I'm into. I mean, these are the same guys last summer that were drinking Natter Days. So you never know what's coming. Like it's going to be it's always kind of this wide spectrum of stuff.
I have a question for you, Joel, also before we get into kind of the pop culture stuff, because I'm interested in this, and I don't know, I don't know how much our listeners are interested, but I don't know a lot about these things. But I always like to ask the guys that are really involved heavily in the craft beer business, kind of about their entry into craft beer and when they kind of first became aware of it, because and also kind of what your opinion is.
Actually, I just want to cut in really quick because Joel, weren't you a desk jockey for a little while?
Oh yeah, a long time. What was it? Like probably about almost 16 years. Right out of high school until the opening of Due South in 2012.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so you just kind of left the world of the cubicle behind.
Well, I had to. I mean, I was jumping from place to place and had no real direction and everything. And, my craft beer origin is sort of a weird tale. I mean, I started basically at my uncle's funeral. I was sitting there just kind of thinking to myself, like, I got to do more. Like, life is short. I got to broaden my horizons, try new things. And the son of that uncle, my cousin, was telling me all about these Belgian beers and things. And I started to check that out. I started, looking at Total Wine, mixed 6-packs, and hooked up with some people there who kind of mentored me into trying new beers. And then, I was into beer for a few years, and then Due South Brewing opened May 12th, 2012. And I started there from day one, just pouring beers, a couple times a month just to, make some extra cash while I was jockeying a cubicle. And eventually I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I even if I take a huge pay cut and have to work 10 times as hard, at least I'll be happy, at least enjoying something that I do and seeing actual results of my labor.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I mean, especially with that brewery, this is sort of, it's somewhat, interesting to think about as well. What is your kind of opinion as far as the big breweries, right? And kind of how craft beer has affected what they're doing and how they're buying things up. And I use this also because I really wanted to introduce this article I'd read this week that cracked me up. But during the whole pandemic thing, there was this big rush for, promote local businesses, like patronize your local businesses, keep those small restaurants, those small places open. So Chuck E. Cheese, who's not a small restaurant, came up with a brilliant idea to advertise themselves as Pasquale's Pizza and Wings on like DoorDash and Uber Eats and all this stuff.
Which is funny because Showbiz Pizza decided to advertise itself as Chuck E. Cheese.
That's right. That's it. Exactly. Like so Chuck E. Cheese immediately recognized for them the threat of a lot of small businesses getting play when they're not getting it. And that it just, for me, the first thing that popped in my head is it's exactly what you see happening with a lot of the breweries, where all these big breweries they're not at face value afraid of the small ones, but they're afraid of all of the small ones taking a big chunk out of it, which is why I think they wind up buying them up and making them smaller portions of their own business. But what's your thought on that?
Well, there's a few different angles to this. And first, let me say that being from Chicago, I truly appreciate the Showbiz Pizza reference.
That was for you, buddy.
Yeah, but, when you get into craft beer, there's sort of this indoctrination where it's like macro is this fizzy yellow piss water and it's not quality and it's garbage and this and that. And then if you actually spend some time in a brew house and have to learn quality and consistency, you start realizing that maybe the shoe is on the other foot. And you go to I got to do an intensive brewing course at UC Davis, and then I was fortunate enough to get the Florida Brewers Guild scholarship to the Siebel Institute for a couple of weeks for another intensive course. So these courses are taught by industry veterans, people who actually do come from smaller breweries and also very large macro industrial factory type places. And they whether or not you like Coors Light or Budweiser or whatever it is, these guys can produce the same beer on multiple continents with different water sources, and it's always going to be the same thing because they've got the process down. Whether you like it or not is a completely different argument. And of course there's the argument to be made about their business practices, their lobbying, their localization of buying up smaller places and playing the pricing game and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we here in Florida, we dealt with their lobbyists fighting against us to even have tap rooms or 64-ounce growlers. So there's all that shit we're up against. But at the same time, you have to appreciate what they've accomplished, and if you truly care about the craft and making beer, you at least at the very minimum have to appreciate that, you know, no matter where you go, your Coors Light is going to be consistent. So, you know, I respect them from the sense of production and quality and consistency if you talk about those things in their truest definitions. But I think with, you know, and believe me, I was someone who after a while started saying, you know, local is not synonymous with quality. You know, you can go to the brewery down the street and drink a locally made artisan handcrafted diacetyl bomb. Whereas, you know, if I go to my local chain sports pub, I'll have a macro lager and it'll be exactly what I expect. So there's a lot of nuance to the argument, and beer geeks really don't take the time to distill it and you know, truly have real rational conversations about it. You know, it's very local. You know, it's what is it called? David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Little versus big, you know, local versus corporate, and it's not as simple as that to me. And I think it's good to think about that because, you know, there are, you know, local jobs in St. Louis where they're making Budweiser. You know, even some of your macro owned quote unquote crafty breweries are still being made by people in, you know, your local community. So there's a lot of nuance to it that I just think people are ignoring.
Do you
And
have a favorite of the kind of the big guys that you like, you really like, or you respect their specific platform?
well, you know, one thing I was going to say was that, you know, at least in this whole pandemic, and you seeing these breweries really fight for their lives and having to pivot and do whatever it takes to survive, it did make me kind of re-up my support for them and go out and get cans and
Me too.
and
Yeah.
hit up their tap rooms and all that stuff.
I've
So
spent so much money on beer.
yeah. You know, at the same time, it's like I've bought a ton of
Very unusual.
I bought a ton of
I
Miller
mean, like
High
more
Life.
than usual. That's what I'm saying. Is like because I feel like I'm almost obligated to, and I'm almost obligated to make that like local. As local.
It's
as
the
possible.
least you can do.
Right. And
Ben.
you know, I'm not going to buy beer because you're down the street, but I am going to buy beer if like I know you make a good beer and I know you and we're friends and I want to see you have a job and
Exactly.
survive. And I would support you just as I would if this whole thing weren't going on. But at the same time, like I'm not going to pass up an 18 pack of Miller High Life at Publix for $11.99. Like no bullshit. I was
It's
at
the
ABC
champagne of beer. I mean,
I was at ABC the other day and I was like, oh my God, they have Bell's Lighthearted. I've been wanting to try that. It's like their
So
kind of
good.
low-cal, lighter version of Two Hearted. And then I was like, $22 for a 12-pack? Kiss my ass.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
That's
Fuck
a
you,
little price
Michigan.
gougey.
it's Michigan, right? Am I
yeah.
wrong?
Well, and I think you're correct. What's funny, I didn't know that, but I learned that, and it was one of my favorite like beer experiences I've ever had. Is I'm at the airport. I had to fly from Ohio to Michigan, and then from Michigan to South Florida. Like I had one of those weird, you know, fly the opposite way things. So I fly to Michigan, and I'm there. Have a layover for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I go to their bar, and I'm like, "What do you have on tap?" And she's like listing the normal like stuff. I'm like, "Do you have anything?"
We got Lion and Kugel Fruity Loops.
Yeah, I was like, "Do you have like any IPAs?" She goes, "Oh, I got like I got some local shit." Like, and she literally just goes, "It Bell's Two Hearted." She was just like the soft like, "Oh, you don't want that shit. That's the local shit that like you can get at any bar around here." And I was like, "Please, can I have
Right.
all of that you
The
have?"
fact that you can get Heady Topper at any fucking gas station in Vermont now.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's just insane.
Well,
but anyways,
Vermont gas stations are high class, though. To be fair,
I mean that is true.
Come on.
Anyways, to kind of pivot hard into some of the pop culture stuff, there was one question that I kind of posited to Joel, which is the way that beer or beer culture has been perceived in pop culture, because I don't feel it's like it's been really truly represented. I think Matt and I think at least have a favorite movie that revolves
Agreed.
around beer. but I feel like it's kind of an unrepresented.
It's Artie
category.
Lang's Beer Fest from 2000.
Does basketball
No,
count?
no. Just so you know, Joel, that movie is Drinking Buddies, the 2013 film Drinking Buddies, which I love just because I'm a huge fan of the producers of that film, which are the guys who did Togetherness.
the Duplass brothers.
Yeah, the Duplass brothers. Yeah, the Duplass brothers. And of course, I love Olivia Wilde, and I love Jason Sudeikis and all those guys.
Anna Kendrick.
And Anna Kendrick.
I don't care for that Anna Kendrick.
Is it Anna?
I'm shutting you
Is
off
it
right
Anna?
now.
I'm always afraid. I'm always afraid of picking the Anna of the Anna.
I love
Nick
both
is no
Kendricks.
longer on. Nick is no longer on the
Nick is
podcast.
gone.
So thanks a lot.
But I love that movie. And that's the one. But it doesn't get too far into the beer thing. It sticks mostly to the relationship side of things. But I do like the synergy, where it's the same as it would be at, like, working at a restaurant, where it's like you get the synergy of the people who are working together. So what are your thoughts? Like, do you feel like it's an unrepresented category? Do you feel like it's something that could be exploited some more?
Well, I think there's definitely room for it to be featured in mainstream pop culture. I mean, I would say that Drinking Buddies is probably the best representation of, at least visually, of a brewery. And I believe that was filmed at Revolution in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's just a terrible movie. It was very disappointing to me.
I love that movie. I love
I
that movie so much.
I agree with Joel. I hate that movie.
But we're also nerds.
I mean, look, I think maybe it was trying to be the Sideways of beer. Who knows?
Oh, that's a good call, actually, though.
But
I don't think the beer was supposed to be the main player in the movie. I think that's
right. And I don't think we've had anything like that. I mean,
right.
I remember talking to a friend and him saying, he had already, I hadn't been in the brewing industry yet. I think that movie was like 2011 or something, but I remember him like being very excited about seeing all the stainless and all that, like, actually represented on screen. But at the same time thinking like, it's still not a great movie. And truly, like, I haven't seen whatever this new series is on Netflix. It seems to be universally panned. I'm curious just to see,
What series is that?
What is it? I don't know what it's called. It's this
beer
series on Netflix now. It's
I didn't even know.
I'm on it. Keep going.
No idea.
Well, it's and I think the beer thing is a lot like a lot of other things.
Blues Brothers.
There you go.
Oh wow,
love the pun. Love the pun.
Not even know.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting with the beer thing is it's very much like any other hobby that starts to edge into mainstream. So we saw it a ton in the early 2000s with poker, right? There are a lot of people that have been playing Texas Hold'em and playing poker for years and watch all that stuff. And all of a sudden hit mainstream and we get movie. We get like 6 movies on it. They're varying degrees of good or bad, or just how strange John Malkovich's accent is. And yeah, probably all bad. And then they kind of drop off and people just go back to being the aficionados that, it's still a thing that people are into and that they like. But I think we haven't quite seen that with beer. We haven't seen any mainstream movies latch on to the whole brewery craft beer. It's usually made fun of.
Like we've seen the chef thing happen. And I feel like it's so similar. I mean, because essentially that's what you are as a brewer, is you're a chef. I mean, and you're just dealing with more science.
And they both got Netflix series.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love Chef and I love the Chef Show. But I mean, you have to think of it in a broader term. I mean, there are people who, fix shoes for a living, or are dry cleaners or landscapers. Like, there's no movie representing them either. I think it's strange how the internet has brought everyone together, yet everyone seems to be factioning off into their own teams and tribes, and everyone is desperate for representation. So, has beer been properly represented on screen? No, but I mean, there's a trillion other things that haven't also.
Well, and that's always like, and that's everybody and their cousin is always like, oh, my job or my thing would make a great movie. Like, everyone's always, I used to hang out at a cigar shop all the time. And the cigar shop was like, oh, this would be a great movie. And it's like, no, it's not. No, most things would not make a great movie. And wisely, they haven't been tackled. And even the beer, I think you're right, Ben. I think it's probably also why that movie is disappointing maybe to brewers, is that When you're looking at something like Drinking Buddies, it's not beer is
about the relation. It's about relationships.
character, but it's not the focus.
Yeah,
of
it's
the
not the
movie.
focus of the
Guys,
film.
guys, the zombie films aren't about the zombies. They're
It's
about
true.
the human
This is
relationships,
true.
man.
I think
well,
beer
so
occasionally is represented nicely, though. Just there are one-off moments in movies. I think,
and that's what I was going to get to. Is I was about to ask if you could, Joel, if you could pick your favorite beer, or even if it just goes to straight alcohol moment or movie, like what would that be?
I mean, and this is kind of going back to what I was saying before about getting into beer, because originally I wanted to get into wine and my wife got pregnant and I was like, well, I'm not going to drink entire bottles of wine by myself. And then lo and behold, there's, 750s of Imperial Stout that I'm lining up for. But,
Nice.
if you want to put them under the flag of alcohol movies, I would say Sideways is probably my favorite. I think it's just very well acted. I love Paul Giamatti, but I love little references to beer, even if it's momentarily. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the comedy Blockers or Cock Blockers. So it's kind of the opposite of American Pie, where these parents are trying to stop their kids from getting laid. And there's a moment where one of the parents shows up at a party and is forced to like butt chug. And the guy goes, okay, we've got a lager or an IPA. I mean, I didn't laugh once during that entire movie. And then I fell out of my seat at that one point.
Well, I think there's a like that was the one that the first time I remember laughing really hard and identifying with a joke, like just a one-off beer joke, was in 40-Year-Old Virgin, and it's this line here.
Wow, this is pretty crowded.
Yeah, well, it's $9 beer night.
That's in when that movie came out, I was poor. It was tough for me to go drinking places because you go to these places, especially in South Florida, and like, why is it so crowded? Oh, well, it's $9 beer night. You're getting a special, so that your beer is only going to cost you $9 tonight. I think there's a lot of things movies get right with some of those just sort of random interactions. And to follow up Ben's question with one for you, because I'm also always interested in the portrayal of drunk people on film, and I'm sure some of us at one time or another have been drunk. Do you feel there are any performances or movies that you feel really capture drunk well? Like you're like, oh yeah, I identify with that, or I know someone that's like that.
I wouldn't say I identify with any of them. I would say, if you're looking for like serious depressing, you would have to go to like, I think it's called When a Man Loves a Woman with, I think it's Andy Garcia and Meg Ryan.
That is a deep cut, my friend.
Yeah,
that is a deep
wow. Oh my
very
God.
Depressing.
Yeah.
Very depressing. But then if you go on YouTube and look up Jim Carrey on the Arsenio Hall show, he goes on and pretends to be drunk for the entire segment and just offends everyone. And this was before like woke culture and Arsenio got a lot of letters from very upset people because he just pretended to be shit-faced the entire time. And it's kind of like the dysfunctional home show character he did on In Living Color, but it's hilarious. And he comes off completely trashed, and it was at the time where it's like you can't just Google this. I want to say it's like 92 or something,
right?
And it's brilliant. I mean, he went on and completely acted like he was blitzed out of his mind, and it very well could have been real back then.
Yeah,
and people weren't sure.
Well, yeah, that was
prep for the Andy Kaufman movie.
Well, it's also just sort of amazing that they're back in the 70s and 80s. There were very much actors who did that, but not pretending. Like my mom has a famous anecdote of going to. She was at some talk show that was shot in New York City before I was born, and it was Orson Welles was on. It was so drunk they literally had to scrap the episode. Like he passed out in the middle of the whole thing, like full on, and they're just like, we can't air this.
If you go online and find Orson Welles' wine commercial, he was a pitch man for a wine, and they show the outtakes and the tortured director trying to get one line out of him and never getting it, and then the final cut, which is all ADR. Yeah, and that was recorded on a different day. It's awful. cringeworthy. Even.
I believe they made fun of that in Schitt's Creek.
They did. Yes, she does.
Oh,
She does
wow.
her own version of that, and it's
That's
pretty
amazing.
fantastic.
It's pretty fantastic.
Well, I got an idea of a beer to pitch. Can I pitch a
Okay, yeah,
beer?
let's hear it.
All right, and look, this is free. You can have this. This one is gratis.
You
All
are,
right,
I'm going to
this,
tell you, you're not going to want this beer, but let's
after
go.
this, I'm going to start charging for my services.
Oh
But
boy.
we're going to go back to the Krispies. Okay.
Oh god.
Think of a highly effervescent brew that's brewed with rice predominantly. Normally that's a filler, but let's
That's a
amp
Rice
it up.
Krispie boy.
Stop! God damn it, Ben! You stepped on my. It's a Rice Krispie Boy treat, is what I was going to say, with a little bit of marshmallow note. Thank you,
Well,
Ben.
so-
Thank you
so
for stepping on my punchline.
I'm wearing a Three Sons hat because one of my friends is a co-owner of the brewery, but they already make a beer called Rice Krispie Boys. So
Rice
yeah.
Krispie Boy treat?
No, not a treat.
Well, then it's
Well, you
don't
better
put marshmallow
you
in it.
better copyright and
well,
trademark
my
that name right
my
now.
version, the treat.
I'm texting
signifies
Corey right now and telling him to put
the
marshmallow
treat.
in it.
Well, that's what makes it the treat. That's what makes a Rice Krispie treat a treat. And it's even better if you have like 3 founders. You can Photoshop their heads into 3 elf bodies.
I like this, which
Like
also would work for Three Sons, but don't tell them that. I would
God, wait,
I would
no,
also
can't do
like
that.
a Rice Krispie treat straw to go with this as well. Just
bet
to,
you would.
just to be fun.
I bet you would.
Oh God, we're the worst type of beer consumer right now.
Why is what bullshit?
Just a subtle
cry
marshmallow
bullshit.
note. I'm not saying knocking them over the head with it. Just a subtle marshmallow note.
Well, Joel, we're
Like-
gonna talk about some movies really quick, and like I said, you're welcome to stay on. But I'm interested in we already kind of talked about the kind of your formative things that you've done, but especially now that you're sort of freelance and you're out there, and I know that you're exploring opportunities. What do you think is the best place for just a normal, like regular kind of consumer to go get a beer anywhere in America that you've been to?
Oh wow.
Like
yeah,
a bar?
It's a hard question. Like
bar, brewery?
Like a brewery. Yeah.
Okay.
I know it's a tough question, and it's kind of loaded, but
Yeah, I'm racking my brain because there are many. I always try to think about the experience. It's not just the beer, and there are certain places that I've been to that are like beautiful and amazing and breathtaking, but maybe it's only hoppy beers. So obviously,
yeah, that was Tilted
you don't wanna
Barn.
recommend that.
I
to
would like
all
to
of
go
America.
to wherever that is.
Yeah, I mean,
Tilted Barn. It's called Tilted Barn. It's south of Providence.
Well, there's Bale Breaker in the Yakima Valley, who I got to visit when I was out there doing hop selection like 4 years ago.
Oh man.
And I mean, there's hops growing on their property, and you're sitting on this beautiful porch watching the sun set over the valley, and it's just unbelievable. But it's also only like pale ales and IPAs. I don't really know what else they have now, but everything was very hop forward, but it was also very hop forward before being hop forward was incredibly douchey. And now I would probably say that like, and like, I feel like saying this slights so many other people, and I don't mean it that way, but if you're making me choose, I would probably say Metropolitan Brewing in Chicago, because I went there sort of on a whim. I was in Chicago for the weekend. Someone who followed me on Twitter worked there and, invited me to come out and just go, hey, come check us out. I'm working the bar today. And I said, okay, cool. So my wife and I go there, and it was just the most wonderful tap room, just vibrant, with people from all walks of life, like, blue collar, everybody, Chicago, and not a single trendy, stupid beer on the menu. It was all traditional stuff, lagers, very clean, crisp, just high quality stuff. And everyone there was just so wonderful and accommodating, and the culture couldn't have been better. And I just feel like that, I mean, there's so many places I would recommend in Chicago that you have to go to, but I would tell people, like, you have to go there if you're in town, just because everything is good. There's not going to be, because, like, if you're bringing someone with you who isn't into beer, they're going to find something they like. You can't say the same for some trendy hype brewery, that's only doing, pastry sours or triple dry hop New England double IPAs. I mean, they truly have just a splendid list of really high quality beers.
It's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
I love it. So Joel, we'll give you the option, because we're going to talk about a couple movies right now. Do you want to hang out around, or you want to take off? Because otherwise we'll give you the plug and the clap.
What about
Whoa,
that game?
we're not going to give him the clap.
Right.
We should.
You say you're going to give him the clap?
Yeah,
really?
Jesus, Ben.
Really?
All right. Well,
It's called the clap.
Now
Oh,
we're
stop. That's not what it's called. That's not a thing, Ben. You
That's
said
not-
that to make a joke.
No.
Applause.
So Ben was
and I get reamed out for making the marshmallow beer. It's unbelievable.
Ben tried to veto this game, but I do think it's kind of fun, and I'm kind
I
of
love the
curious. For any person that breaks out when a man loves a woman, I really am very curious about their and knows drinking buddies. You seem fairly savvy. So I've collected a list of fictional beers that appear in movies and or TV shows, and I wonder, do you think you can identify the beer by the TV show by the beer name?
Okay.
All right.
Give it a shot.
So we'll start with some of these are easier.
into it, Ben.
Some
He's
of these
into
are
it.
easier than others. Pawtucket Patriot.
Family Guy.
Correct. Duff.
Simpsons.
Correct.
Give him
Elsinore.
something hard. Come on.
What was the last one?
Elsinore.
I don't know.
That's a tricky one. That Nick will know that one because it was his choice, which is that's from Strange Brew. Alamo beer. This one I didn't know. This is a tricky one. A lot of these are
I think
animated. I'll give you a hint. A lot of these are animated series.
Is it TV shows and movies?
This TV shows and movies, yes.
I don't know.
It's animated.
Yes. Mike Judge involved cartoon.
King of the Hill?
That's right.
I was gonna say maybe for a second there I thought it was Robert Rodriguez. Maybe.
No, which that sounds like one it has to do. Aspen beer.
All right, that's Colorado.
Ben should know this one, but he would miss it on trivia and then be very upset with himself.
I have no idea.
It is from Alien.
Alien.
Aspen beer is from Alien. Sorry, I had to, Ben. Butterbeer.
Harry Potter.
That's correct. Cerveza Chango.
Shango. No idea.
Nick might have given you a hint just a couple of questions ago, but that is from Dusk Till Dawn. Cerveza Chango.
I felt like that was somewhere in that realm.
Yep. Dharma.
Lost?
That's correct. Well done.
Nice. Well,
That's
yeah, well done.
fantastic.
Oh,
Yep.
He
He loves the loss. He loves the loss.
loves the loss. That was
I've
good.
only seen the
Lost.
first episode.
Then he loves Lost.
and that question gets Joel invited back to the
Exactly.
New Way podcast.
Girly Girl beer. This one's going back a little bit.
Girly girl beer.
This is a tough one. I would not have gotten this one, but I watched all of this show.
Is that Hans and Franz?
Was it
SNL
Bewitched?
beer?
No, it's from Married with Children.
Oh, I was gonna say it.
Oh shit, man! That's amazing.
Matt.
Okay, this is a go. This is my of all of these. This is my favorite beer name from any pop culture thing. Lowbrow.
BRAU, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know.
that's Futurama. That is easily my favorite one.
Obvious.
I agree. I mean,
Some of these
they
get
had,
tough.
They had lowbrow and slurm. They had
Yeah.
the beer and soda markets totally cornered.
Some of these are now getting really hard. Old Dusseldorf. I don't think anyone knows.
That sounds real familiar.
I think your roommate
It's a
dressed
movie.
up
It's a
as this
movie.
It's a TV show.
Oh.
Your roommate, I believe, dressed up as this character during a Movember mustache month, perhaps.
Oh, is that Magnum PI?
It's Magnum PI.
Yeah.
Samuel Jackson beer.
Chappelle Show.
That's correct. Romulan ale.
Star Trek.
All right. And the one that no one in a million years would ever
Deep
get.
Space Nine.
Yeah.
All right. All right. There,
The one that no
buddy.
one will ever get, but also probably my second favorite on this list. Vanderbrow. I don't think anyone but Ben and Beth and I watched this show.
Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23.
That is correct. It's James Vanderbeek's signature brew called the Vanderbrow, which is pretty fantastic.
That's amazing.
Well done. You picked out some great ones
good.
on there.
That was good.
I can't believe you didn't hit me with the Schrader brow.
Oh man!
Come on.
Oh man, that is you are dead on. I did not get. There was also one I skipped called Heisler beer, and that's because it's in like 30 different things.
Heisenberg beer and Schrader.
I missed the Schrader Brow. God damn it! I failed.
You really broke bad on this one, buddy.
Definitely failed us all. So Joel, we do a thing on the show every so often called Cold Readings, where we assign movies to one another that we haven't really ever heard of or know anything about. We watch them and we come on and we kind of describe the plot and a review of it and talk about the movies. We decided for this episode we were going to do it with beer related things, but not quite as slavish about not having ever heard of it. We just kind of wanted new movies we really didn't know very well to watch for the night,
or ones that we haven't talked about before, basically. Or at length.
So I'm going to start off with Nick because we have touched on this one a couple of times on the show, but it is arguably one of my favorite drinking movies of all time.
Okay, so you're gonna get kind of a fragmented review.
Okay,
because I was watching this while preparing an edit, so my attention span went in and out of focus. It is Strange Brew, starring Dave Thomas, who went on to make hamburgers across the nation, and Rick Moranis. And it's funny because it starts off a lot like our podcast does, a lot of dead air and jokes that don't land. And Bob and Doug McKenzie, who are brothers, introduce the show, the movie version of their SCTV characters. And the movie starts with people that breaks the fourth wall, and then it sees people in the theater watching the film, demanding their money back and leaving in a huff. And then it pivots real fast, and it's very schizophrenic film, Matt.
Oh yeah.
It's all over. So then they go home, and Rick Moranis has already refunded a family $15 because they hated the film, and they get home and they realize that was the father's beer money, and these grown men are entrusted to bring their father beer every day, and now they don't have money to bring their father beer. And thus is the catalyst for all the action in the film is that they spent their father's beer money, and they are broke losers that have no means of getting a simple 12-pack. So they go to Elsinore Beer, the aforementioned Elsinore Beer Brewing, with a plot, pretending that they found a mouse in the beer to get a free case. And they unfurl a vast conspiracy and battle for the Elsinore Beer Brewing mogul company.
Yeah.
Fortune, I guess. And lots of things happen in between. They're psychotic, mind-controlled hockey teams. Help me out, Matt. I really don't know what I watched today.
Well,
I liked it. I liked it, but I don't know what I saw.
The main thing that I love about Strange Brew is that they went out of their way to make Hamlet, but based in a brewery in Canada, and that is literally they are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Is Elsinore a real brewery in Canada?
No, Elsinore is the name of the cat. Elsinore is the name of where the land is in Hamlet. Like all of it is based off of that.
They are Elsinore Brewing is on Untapped, and I couldn't definitively prove they weren't real.
No, Elsinore is the castle, the castle in Hamlet that's going to get raided.
Which is the logo of the beer on the labels, of course.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, essentially, I can't imagine what the writing process of that movie must have been like, because it's literally, and you're right, it is schizophrenic, because you can tell that they were trying different sketch ideas, and then somehow halfway through, they were like, hey, what if we did Hamlet? Like, what if we did Hamlet and like, it was a whole Hamlet ripoff? And
it's funny that Ben started off with a random Wayne's World reference, because this is the Canadian Wayne's World in many ways. It's a less put together film, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Max von Sydow is the evil brewmeister.
That is Brewmaster Smith is his name. The evil guy, Brewmaster Smith.
Smith with a Y.
And basically, the whole plot is, Joel, this is crazy. Have you seen Strange Brew?
You know, I feel terrible. I haven't. It's one of those things where I feel like I get crucified if I admit it.
I mean, I had neither. I own a Bob and Doug McKenzie vinyl record.
I made you listen to.
And I've listened to it several times. I've never seen the film. But at some point, they realize that the brewmaster is evil because it's Max von Sydow. Of course he's evil. He's been putting a strange mind-controlling element into the beer, Elsinore beer. so that when you drink it and you hear a certain musical cadence, which Matt so beautifully played a second ago, that people that have drank the beer become violent and susceptible to mind control. So the plot is this guy's trying to take over the world through contaminating his beer, and these hapless brothers are the only thing stopping it.
I think the best way, it's a combination of
It's crazy.
Of Wayne's World, Dumb and Dumber, and Hamlet. That's pretty much like much all it is. These guys sort of happen into these things, and there's not a lot of reason for them other than, hey, wouldn't it be funny if this sort of thing? Except they try for the middle stretch, really, with the Hamlet plot to sort of string together this thing. It is a rare movie. It is a very rare.
Definitely
movie.
the most apropos. It's definitely the best description of that movie I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say it's certainly the best adaptation of Shakespeare's Hamlet.
I goes that far as well to say absolutely. Now Ben, I don't even know, you didn't even share what movie you were watching with the rest of us. Did you?
Yeah, I did.
I thought you just said it wasn't on the list.
So no. I wasn't on the list, but I did share it.
Smokey and the Bandit, right?
No. The one that I wanted to discuss was The World's End, which is Edgar Wright's third film in the Cornetto trilogy. And the reason why I wanted to discuss it is because beer plays a central part of the plot of the movie, which is essentially that
in many Edgar Wright films, honestly.
Well, honestly,
have a pint, wait for this Corona to wash out.
I'll get to that in 1 second. But essentially, the plot of this movie is a bunch of childhood friends try to do this legendary run where you do 12 pints per person at 12 different pubs over the course of one night.
One pint per person at 12 per person, not a Ben night where you do 12 pints per person at each of the 12 breweries for 144 brews.
It's the Kessel Run of beer hops.
Yeah, exactly.
Of pub hops.
And they're all dead by bar 3.
And so how it didn't end up happening, and then they went on to basically as adults try and recreate it based off of the whims of the major fuck up who was the leader, of their group. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because it's a movie that I think, because of the prestige of the Cornetto trilogy, because I think Shaun of the Dead is definitively one of the funniest comedy horror movies of all time.
The funniest comedy horror film.
I won't
Return of the Living Dead is a close second.
Unless we say horror comedy and we talk about Ghostbusters.
While I think that Matt and Nick might hold Hot Fuzz in higher regard than I do, I still think it's one of the hardest I've ever laughed in a movie theater in my entire life. So obviously it's a brilliant film, and Edgar Wright as a director, it has a clear vision, especially for visual comedy. When I first saw The World's End in theaters in 2013 as the end of the Cornetto trilogy, I was extremely let down.
What is the name of the trilogy? What are you saying?
Cornetto. It's the ice cream, the
Cornetto
ice cream cone. Yeah,
the Cornetto.
They eat one in each of the movies.
Got it.
And I did not like the movie really at all. I was kind of put off by it. I've revisited it twice, like a couple of years after that, and I was just like, actually, maybe it wasn't that bad. And then last year I saw it, and I was like, fuck, this movie is great. Like, it really is.
It clicked.
Yeah, it finally clicked for me. And I realized, because I think it's not just because the pub played a different role, because obviously all these guys are growing up and they're playing it, and then you've got the different characters who don't want to go on this pub crawl, basically, whether it's because, I quit drinking after this terrible accident that happened 16 years ago or whatever. It turns into this whole other thing. And this one guy is basically trying to reclaim his glory because he was this basically, he's just been this drunken degenerate for his entire life. And that's the only thing he has going for him in his life. But I love that movie because not only does beer play a central factor in the pub, like it has in the past Cornetto trilogy movies, and I love the fact that it doesn't only play a part, but at the end of the movie, this like salient alien intelligence is basically gets into an argument with 3 drunk guys. They're just like, we're we have the right to be fucked up. Like, who the fuck are you to come down here and like fuck with us or whatever? And he's just like,
me during quarantine when anyone judges me.
And it's one of the funniest like sequences. After watching it, I realized where it's just like you can't argue with somebody who's that drunk. They're just
I've tried, Ben.
I know you have. I know you have. And it's just like, it's so funny because it's just like, they're just like, listen, but it's also super, super, super like impactful because you're just like, we're people. Like we have the right, we have free will. We have the right to do whatever we really want to.
We're libertarians.
And when you take this, like when you take our free will away of like whatever, like, cause they're just like, you're the worst planet in the galaxy when it comes to, and they're just like, so what? And he's like, I take pride in that or whatever. And they're all just like, basically like, yeah, okay. We're this entire country of fuck ups. And yeah.
And that's just Britain. That's not even here.
Exactly. But we still have this like
America light.
Yeah. They're doing okay.
Anyways, I really love the social commentary because it's hysterical. Like it ends up being this fucking hysterical movie. And I really liked it more and more every time I saw it. And I was just like, it really does feel like a nice definitive end to that trilogy, even though
a definitive world's end,
which is, well, yes, it does. But it's also clear that Shaun of the Dead and that Hot Fuzz and that World's End are so clearly different films.
Now, are they shared universe? Is it a trilogy, or is that supposed to be in the same world? No,
just right. Just the three of them and a few of the other actors that kind of show up and stuff. But
it's mostly actors and stuff.
I think that's a really good review of that, Ben. I know. I still have a problem with the alien thing as the MacGuffin. And I love all of the rest of the themes.
The more I watch the alien scene, the more I love it.
I have not. I've watched
just
it
like
once.
Indiana Jones Part 4.
No, we will not.
No,
we will not be doing.
Happen.
All right, I'm going to put you on mute again, my friend. No, I think that's actually a really great point though about that, like that interaction with drunk people when you're not drunk. I know this is one of Nick's favorite clips, and I love that this exact phrase appears in two different movies with two different drunk women, and it's typically a drunk woman thing. I don't mean to be super stereotypical about it, but I think every one of us has heard this at some time in our life before.
Are you mad at me?
Which is from an SNL sketch, and it happens again in Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
You didn't say hi to me earlier. Are you mad at me?
And I was realizing that like this is such a universally understood, like that
mad at me?
No guy hears that and doesn't go, oh, like it just like right there.
Oh no.
And I think that
what a pull.
That is one of the things I really do like in movies are those just movies, TV, whatever it is. They occasionally
play that drop one more time.
I know it is Nick's favorite.
Are you mad at me?
It's just so real. It is just so real.
It is so good. God, that delivery is just. Who was that?
That's Heidi Gardner on SNL.
Heidi Gardner on SNL. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't realize that when I'm drunk, I say this.
You make stop Trump.
Which is very different. It's very different. But there are different things. So I'm gonna try to get through my. So I watched.
That's only after cat food, though.
That's only after I eat cat food to get all friskies.
That was literally a recording of Matt.
That
probably my bachelor party
from 2011.
In 2011,
I've seen Matt. Let's say fairly lubricated before in the past, but never as much as that night. And we have a recording of it, which is I'm so sorry, Matt, that even exists. But the fact that
stop Trump.
You make stop Trump. I said in 2011. We don't know why.
Randomly
I got
drunk.
really drunk and I started saying you make stop Trump. And
for no reason.
We don't know.
You don't know what that means still.
But now we know.
So
now we know.
Now we know. It's the cat food time machine. So I'm gonna try to. I want to try to get through this because I took way too many notes on the thing that I watched. So
let's get the cliff notes, Shane. Come on.
I'm gonna try, but there's a lot to unpack in this movie, and it's kind of amazing.
What did you see?
So I picked a 1985 satire directed by someone who never directed another movie again, nor directed any movie before this. Written by someone who wrote this and one other movie, and that was it. But lensed by Bill Butler, who was the cinematographer on Jaws, Cuckoo's Nest, Grease, all the Rocky sequel, and scored by Bill Conti, and it's got a great fucking score. And then the cast is
a bunch of Bills.
Yeah, the cast is great too. Kenneth Mars, who's been in Young Frankenstein, and the producers, big in major roles in both those movies.
Was that the name of Veronica's father, the PI?
Kenneth? Was it? I don't know. Loretta Swit, who gave Ben his first erection as Hot Lips on the TV series MASH. David Alan Grier, that went on to go and be in Living Color. Rip Torn, playing almost exactly the same character he plays in Dodgeball, almost completely. And last but not least, Corey's dad from Boy Meets World, playing a cowboy and completely miscast.
I like that guy though. I thought he was.
He's great. He's not bad in this. It's just he doesn't seem like a cowboy to me.
Fair enough.
Premise is very simple. Kenneth Mars plays Adolf Norbecker, and you can be sure that the fact that he's named Adolf is going to come into play later on. This is a German brewer of Norbecker beer, and he doesn't like his advertising. He's watching Michelob and Budweiser. They've got extreme boating, speedboats, and they've got we lost. we lost Joel.
That's fine.
We've got speedboats, and we've got
you took too many notes, Matt.
Yeah,
and
volleyball, all this stuff. And goes to his ad agency and says, "I want a better ad campaign, or you're going to get fired." So we go to this ad agency where Loretta Swit is the only female executive and is the most anti-woman agency, the most over the top anti-feminist thing since the last season of Stranger Things. It's literally the first interaction with her is she sits down at the boardroom table, and the guy goes, "Hey, nice pantsuit," and she gives him a comeback, and he goes, "DYKE, right, guys?" And I was just like, "Oh my god!" That guy, by the way, his name is Reamer. Their boss's name is
Reamer.
Their boss's name
basketball.
Yes, his other coworker's name is Dickler, and then there's another boss's name Femur. They're all just everything is. So I started to realize at this point this is a way over the top satire. At first, I really thought it was just bad '80s just bad shit, but it turns out this is actually trying to be a satire. So Loretta Swit's character BD. It comes up that she's going to make an ad campaign where she's like, we want to do it only after they go, what does the lady executive have to say? That's how they refer to her in the room. So she stands up. Now, this is not referenced, and it does not seem to be a plot point, but she is in between while this meeting's been happening, she's taken her jacket off, and she is wearing a blouse and no bra and is completely see-through. And it's never addressed. And she wears the same outfit multiple times in the movie, just kind of flopping around. And it's never, no one's ever just why did this happen? But anyway.
Were you like that? Were you why is it like
I was confused.
I don't want to watch this anymore.
So her idea, she's going to pitch to the blue collar crowd. She wants men that other men can identify with, that can be better versions of themselves, but not these models and all this stuff. She wants to do that.
I really think it's great that you picked really a strong feminist beer to review, man.
I didn't know what it was before I saw it. So she goes, men will drink the beer that makes them feel more like men. By the way,
right, Ben? Right, Ben?
Yep. There we go. So the one thing that is very interesting about this movie, she is the most anti-feminist out of all of them. She's actually the worst. She almost is the villain of the movie. She just gets deeper and deeper in doing these really misogynist things. It's kind of crazy. Which makes me wonder if it was actually written for a man, and they just cast her and then let it go. It's
I mean, back then that wouldn't have been a decision.
One character once makes a point of it, and I'll get to that in a second. But other than that, they don't really reference. So So she finds these. So then we meet our three protagonists in the movie, which are David Allen Greer, the guy that played the cowboy.
I love Dag.
I'm
so
a
much.
huge fan.
We've talked about this before. I
oh
love
yes,
that
he's
guy.
phenomenal. So we meet these three guys. One is a construction worker who loses his job while he's ogling a woman. His name is Frankie Falcone. I'll give you an idea of what sort of stereotype he is.
This movie seems real proud boy.
Oh
real
yeah,
proud boy.
Then there's the cowboy who lost his car named Merle Draggett, and then David Allen Greer plays a guy who's passed over.
Draggett, same difference.
Whatever. Then David Allen Greer is an attorney who's been passed over for a promotion because he's black. His boss always calls him Washington, even though that is not his name. And that's Elliot Morrison, right? So the three of them wind up in a bar at the same time as Loretta Swit. And she's also hired this guy to direct it, who used to direct these big Westerns, Man's Man, played by Rip Torn, right? So we get all these guys in a bar. There's a robbery that accidentally...
Also, by the way, real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know if I brought this up in the podcast before, but Rip Torn stands out to me in the history of actors. All the actors that there have been.
Best stage name ever.
There has literally never been anyone that has two synonyms for past tense verbs.
Yeah. Well, it would be ripped.
Synonyms.
That'd be ripped torn.
Well, that's true, I guess.
But he was often drunk, so he would be ripped torn.
No. So it's present participle and then past participle,
Anyway.
rip, and then torn.
I'm almost through here.
You're almost there.
I'm gonna get us there.
Now I know what you guys felt like during my election musical.
Yes. So anyway, these guys all accidentally foil this robbery, and she's like, "Oh my God, these are the guys from my commercial. We're gonna remake this whole robbery thing, and we're gonna make them the heroes of it." And that starts a new campaign called Norbecker Pilsner. Drink it if you're man enough. And this goes huge. Dudes fucking respond gigantic to it. So now it essentially falls into one of these movies where you've got these three guys that now are kind of rags to riches and they're celebrities. And you've got the executives are getting worse and worse with their ads, which is easily the most fun throughout the movie. They basically start making all of these really terrible ad campaigns, and they are so close to campaigns we have seen, just slightly over the edge. I really felt they actually did get kind of the idea of the satire on there. So I want to read you just a couple of these.
So you think it was self-aware?
Oh yes, it's once you get to the ads, you can tell. First, they asked David Allen Greer to be more black, so there's a whole thing where he's trying to watch this black comedian and figure it out. Then they cast and model as his wife because he's the only one of the three guys that's married, and then she's like. He gets injured in this one scene, and they bring her to like the press conference, and they won't let his real wife to her because the ad exec is like, no, you're messing with reality. You can't be there. You've got to. This is the idea that we've got there. So their next ad, so the ads start getting progressively worse. The next campaign they come out is called "Whip Out Your Norbecker." This one starts with the three of them in a pickup truck, and it's like a overly bouncy truck, and they're trying to like get through lines and they've got like 6-pack of beers. Like all we need when we go out for hunting for a weekend is just a case of Norbecker and our friends. And then a woman just pops out from below frame, like clearly having been filleting one of the guy in the middle. And she's like, "Am I doing okay?" And he's like, "Yep." And puts her back down, and then it's like, "Whip out your Norbecker." That becomes a huge campaign for "Whip Out Your Norbecker." And then the Italian dude, he does one where he's got like 20 women surrounding him, and he's just like, "Not now, not now." And he's like, "You can always get a better woman, but you can't get a better beer." Norbecker.
I'm not gonna watch this movie.
No, you're not. No one is going to ever watch. I'm
not gonna watch this.
I would have gladly have watched this with you guys. Would have been much more fun, but. And then they go on a talk show with like a Phil Donahue-esque character played by the guy who was the voice of the Snow Miser in The Year Without Santa.
What?
If you're gonna watch any scene,
that is miscast. It should have been Heat Miser.
If you're gonna watch any scene in this movie, I like this scene the most because it felt like UHF to me. It's super broad. Like he keeps like
sold.
They bring the three guys on there, and all the women in the audience are like, "You're misogynist and you're assholes." And he's like, yes, no. They say that they're good men, but are they? Let's ask the crowd. And it's like every bit is just him like consistently going back to it. But it ends with
I don't think I'm going to watch this film, man.
It ends with a plane crash and all kinds of things are going on in it. There's really the main brewer,
a fitting plane crash.
I will tell you the final shot of the movie, Nick. This will tell you everything you need to know. We've the three guys have gone back to their lives after David Allen Greer gets very drunk and he goes to a bar called the Toolbox and he's like, look at all these manly men here. Look at these are men's men. These are the guys I want to hang out with. And he invites his friends and of course there's this very, very hysterical, oh my God, straight guys are in a gay bar.
That reminds me of a time that I went into a bar called the Hole in One in San Diego. And
That'll happen.
It was right across from a golf course, so I didn't suspect anything. I walked in at like a bunch of San Diego Chargers merchandise. I'm like, oh, this is clearly a sports straight bar. It was not. It was 100% a gay bar, and it was one of the best nights I've ever had in San Diego.
Do you remember how prevalent the trope of men accidentally finding themselves in a gay bar was in 80s movies? Like, it happened every other movie.
Guess what? It happened in real life to me. I believe it now. I believe it.
It also happened a lot in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah. Listen, wait a minute. You might be onto something.
You might be onto
something.
I think it's a pretty common trope.
Well, so
turns out they're way more fun than straight bars.
So
way more fun.
There's a reason why we only went to Brothers in college.
So they break out into a fight similar to the beginning of the movie, and the old man Norbecker gets it, and the idea is like, oh, these gay guys also like drinking beer. And the final bit of it is Norbecker is making his own commercial in a sauna with a bunch of gay men selling Norbecker Light.
Light.
He's like, get a Norbecker Light if you're sensitive enough, instead of if you're strong enough in the beginning. And then he gets in a hot tub with a bunch of naked men, and that is the end of the movie. It is. I really watching it was like if we had all been like nicely lubricated and just watching this together, it could have rivaled Aliens in LA. It is because what's funny is that there are moments in it there are moments where the satire is really, really fucking on point, but then they ruin it by like just they fall into this weird trap.
Honestly, it's funny when you describe this. It sounds a lot to me like half the room was Proud Boys and half the room was like South Park writers who get the irony and the satire, and they're constantly fighting against each other and making compromises and
either that or just
working a movie together,
or that's just how that's just how satire is in the 80s. You know that they get away with what they
highly toxic.
No one comes across great in it. The gay bar is for me is the worst part of it because it's the only time that the three leads really come off like very, very poorly in a way that I don't think they're meant to, just for a cheap joke. Like it's an easy gag. But the rest of it, they're the one, because when they go on the talk show, the guys like the women, all these women are yelling at them like, I can't believe you do with these ads. David Allen Greer's like, I'm just doing it for the money. And like, oh, I guess that's makes it okay. They call them all out, and then they're like, where the one lady gets up and she goes, we shouldn't be mad at these actors, which is sort of true. Like I don't know who would get mad at like the actors for an ad and be like, we should get mad at the people that wrote this stuff. Yeah. And they're like, oh well, we tried to get producer BD Thompson here, but we couldn't. And like, yeah, I bet he's scared too. And the guy goes, well, actually, it's Miss B.D. Thompson, and everyone goes like crazy. Like that's the only time it's ever brought up is that she's in this cycle, and she wins an award at the end. She's like, gives this impassioned speech about like we should only advertise things we believe in and do it honestly. And
I thought the movie ended in a sauna.
No, that's part of the ending. Listen, I skipped a lot. I skipped the whole.
Really? It seems pretty fucking comprehensive to me, man.
The plane crash involved a guy falling down, and they have to rescue him, and they have to recreate the plane crash, and then it's
20 minutes. You didn't skip anything.
Fucking impossible. I missed half the movie.
You didn't skip anything.
I skipped the part where Norbecker, for some reason, the entire movie is eating raisins. It's never explained. He's just constantly eating raisins. You don't know what it is for the first part. Then he gets a bowl of them.
Guess what?
Then a guy steals his raisins, and he chokes on them, and he starts sneezing, going through the whole scene, and then he shoots a raisin out of his nose at Norbecker.
So now you haven't skipped anything.
No, there's still more.
No, there isn't. That's it.
There is absolutely.
End the podcast.
I have skipped so
End
much.
the podcast. It's over.
The fucking raisins thing was the weirdest fucking
lose.
part. How about the part where?
I said good day, sir.
How about where Adolf Norbecker decides he's gonna
Adolf?
his name is Adolf Norbecker. He
I've
decides
heard
he's
enough.
gonna expand his operation into
enough.
France
I've
and then
heard enough.
Czechoslovakia and then Poland and then Germany.
All right, that's enough. I've heard enough.
This movie is
End
layers
the-
upon layers
end
upon
the
layers.
Podcast. End the podcast.
Layers.
This is it.
Layers of shit.
I will never see this movie.
If ever there was a how did this get made, this movie, you know what?
Someone get Paul Scheer on the blower.
I
right
wish
away.
Joel was still here because he was looking for a movie that really gets beer right, and I think this movie nails it 100%.
It got everything, and it got everything else wrong.
It gets advertising completely correct, and the fact the guy that's brewing it just calls it fermented piss-colored water. Like he doesn't care about the brew. He's just like, I want to be rich and whatever. Fucking crazy.
On that note, I'm not sure they want the cross promotion at this point.
Oh no!
But UnitedWeDrink.com.
There you go.
Go there and just say you found your way there from here, and then
Tell them the New Way podcast sent you.
and embarrass us.
How come I can't say that word?
Roads.
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 Rowards. That's
Rowards.
a total weird word, isn't it?
You mixed up, Trump.
All right.
Rowards. Rowards.
I want to thank you so much for listening to the New Way podcast, all of it. Please go out to your local. You can watch Beer, by the way, for free on Prime Video. In case all of you were interested in this movie, I'd highly recommend it. And we'll talk to you on next week's episode. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.